Ladies and gentlemen, what does it mean to know you are enough? What does it mean for a woman to stand in the fullness of her being without the need to seek validation from others, to prove her worth, or to fit herself into the narrow definition society imposes? A woman who knows she is enough understands that her worth is not something that can be measured by the ever-changing standards of the world. She is not a product to be evaluated based on her achievements, her appearance, or her status. No, her value is innate. It lies in her essence, in the core of her being, which is beyond the limits of the mind's judgments. She is not defined by her roles. She is not merely a mother, a daughter, or a sister. These are parts of her life, but they do not exhaust her identity. She is more than her job, her relationships, or any of the labels that others might place upon her. She is the totality of life itself, unfolding, shifting, and yet constant in her fundamental nature. In a world that encourages us to strive for perfection, she knows that perfection is an illusion. She embraces her imperfections, for they are what make her real. She does not need to hide her flaws, nor does she believe that they diminish her. On the contrary, it is her willingness to be whole, in all of her human fragility, that gives her the deepest strength. Comparison, too, has no place in her life. She does not measure herself against others, for she understands that each person walks their own unique path, and her journey is as sacred as any. She knows that to compare is to miss the richness of the present moment, to diminish the magnificence of who she is right now. In her acceptance of herself, she becomes a beacon of freedom. She is free from the tyranny of societal expectations, free from the constant need to seek approval or permission. She stands in her truth, unshaken by the fleeting opinions of others. She is enough simply because she exists. This self-love, this radical acceptance, is not an act of selfishness but of self-liberation. To love oneself is not to be arrogant or to seek to dominate others. It is, instead, the acknowledgement of one's inherent worth, a recognition that we do not need to earn our place in this world, we are born with it. She knows that strength is found not in resistance, but in surrender. The woman who knows she is enough does not fight against the current of life. She moves with it, trusting that the universe will provide what she needs. She knows that control is an illusion, and that peace comes when we let go and allow life to unfold as it will. In this surrender, she finds her greatest power. She is free from the burden of doing, of striving, of constantly needing to prove something. She can simply be. In the stillness of her presence, she knows that she is whole, enough as she is, and that no external force can take that truth from her. So let us all aspire to the wisdom of the woman who knows she is enough. Let us find the courage to love ourselves as we are, to stop chasing perfection, to embrace our vulnerabilities, and to trust the flow of life. For in this knowing we discover the profound beauty and power of simply being who we are. Living in wholeness is not a destination, nor is it a goal to be achieved. It is a state of being, a profound realization that we are complete, not in some future moment, but in the present. When we embrace our wholeness, we come to understand that we are not fragmented pieces of a puzzle, constantly trying to fit together, but rather an intricate and beautiful whole, unfolding in each moment. This realization frees us from the constant pursuit of external validation, from the pressure to change or improve ourselves to fit the ideals of others or the society around us. To live in wholeness is to recognize that we are already enough exactly as we are. We do not need to seek validation from the outside world, nor do we need to achieve anything to feel worthy. The very act of being alive, of breathing, of experiencing this moment is proof of our inherent worth. In a world that often tells us we are not enough, whether through advertisements, social media, or the opinions of others, we must remember that these external forces cannot define us. Our true value lies within, and it is not something that can be taken away or added to. Wholeness is not the absence of flaws, in fact, it is the acceptance of them. It is the acknowledgement that our imperfections are part of the totality of our being, and they do not diminish us. The world may encourage us to fix our flaws, to strive for perfection, but in living in wholeness, we recognize that our flaws are simply part of what makes us uniquely human. To be whole is to embrace all aspects of ourselves, the light and the dark, the strengths and the weaknesses, the moments of grace and the moments of struggle. We are not incomplete because we have flaws, we are complete because we accept and integrate them into our being. Wholeness also means accepting the fullness of our emotions. Too often we are taught to suppress or deny our feelings, especially those deemed as negative or undesirable. But to live in wholeness is to feel deeply, to allow ourselves to experience the full spectrum of human emotions without judgment. Whether it is joy, sorrow, anger, or fear, each emotion is a messenger, revealing something important about our inner landscape. When we allow ourselves to feel fully without shame or guilt, we reclaim our power and authenticity. We stop hiding behind masks of perfection and begin to live with vulnerability, courageously embracing all that we are. Living in wholeness also means letting go of the notion that we need to constantly change or improve. While growth is a natural part of life, the desire to be someone else, to be better than we are, can often leave us feeling incomplete. We may spend our lives chasing an idealized version of ourselves, believing that we will only be enough once we reach some distant goal. But when we accept that we are already whole, we realize that growth does not come from striving for an unattainable perfection, but from deepening our understanding of ourselves and embracing the fullness of our being as it is. The idea of wholeness also involves the recognition that we are part of something greater than ourselves. We are not isolated individuals separate from the world around us, but interconnected beings in a vast and intricate web of life. To live in wholeness is to understand our place in this interconnectedness, to feel the unity of all existence. We are not solitary islands disconnected from one another, but part of the same flow of life, constantly influencing and being influenced by the world around us. This realization brings a sense of peace and belonging as we come to understand that we are not alone in our journey. We are all part of a shared experience, and our wholeness is inextricably linked to the wholeness of others. In essence, living in wholeness is an act of radical acceptance. It is the acceptance of ourselves, of others, and of life as it unfolds. It is a surrender to the present moment, an understanding that we are not broken, nor are we something that needs to be fixed. We are whole in our essence, and this truth is liberating. When we live in wholeness, we stop searching for external validation, for approval, or for something outside of ourselves to make us feel complete. We realize that we are already enough, and in that realization we find peace. In embracing our wholeness, we step into the fullness of life, fully alive, fully present, and fully at peace with who we are. The eternal nature of the self is a concept that transcends the boundaries of time, space, and circumstance. It invites us to look beyond the transient nature of our physical existence and to recognize something deeper, something unchanging that lies at the core of our being. It speaks to the truth that despite the many roles we may play throughout our lives, the many identities we may adopt, and the ever-changing circumstances in which we find ourselves, there is an essence within us that is eternal. This essence does not age, does not fade, and cannot be diminished by time. It simply is, ever present and unshaken. We often become attached to the surface of life, to the fleeting experiences, the passing moments, and the identities that we form based on these experiences. Our lives unfold in a seemingly linear way with beginnings, middles, and endings. And we grow from children to adults, from beginners to experts, from one state of being to another. Yet, in the midst of all this change, the self remains constant. The body may grow older, the mind may evolve, and external circumstances may shift dramatically, but the essence that is truly you remains untouched by these changes. It is like the sky that remains unchanged even as clouds move across it, ever present and unwavering. When we begin to recognize the eternal nature of the self, we start to realize that we are not merely the sum of our thoughts, emotions, or physical experiences. These are just temporary aspects of our existence, part of the flow of life, but not who we truly are. Who we truly are cannot be defined by any label or limitation. It is not the body that we inhabit, nor is it the mind that constantly churns with thoughts and desires. It is something deeper, something more expansive. It is the awareness that underlies all experiences, the consciousness that sees and knows without being affected by the content of those experiences. This awareness is timeless, it has no beginning and no end. It simply is. In this understanding, we begin to let go of the fear that often comes with the passing of time. We fear aging, we fear death, we fear the impermanence of all things. But when we recognize the eternal nature of the self, we see that these fears are based on a misunderstanding of who we are. We are not the body that ages, nor are we the thoughts that come and go. We are the awareness, the presence that remains constant through all of it. We are the one who experiences the passing of time but is not affected by it. This realization brings a sense of peace and liberation. We are not bound by time, we are free from the fear of loss and change, because we recognize that the essence of who we are is not subject to these things. This understanding also frees us from the need to achieve, to acquire, or to prove our worth. If we are already whole, if we are already eternal in our essence, then we do not need to seek validation from the external world. We do not need to measure ourselves against others, nor do we need to accumulate possessions or accomplishments to feel complete. Our true value is inherent in our being. We are not defined by what we do, but by what we are. And what we are is timeless, infinite, and beyond the reach of any external measurement. The eternal nature of the self also leads us to a deeper understanding of interconnectedness. If we are eternal, then so is everything else. All beings, all things, share in this timeless essence. We are not separate from the world around us, but intrinsically connected to it. The boundaries that seem to divide us, the boundaries of body, mind, and identity, are illusions. At the deepest level, we are all expressions of the same eternal truth, and when we recognize this, we begin to live with greater compassion, empathy, and understanding. We see that the suffering of others is our suffering, and their joy is our joy. We are all part of the same infinite consciousness, flowing together, united in our shared eternal nature. To live with the awareness of the eternal nature of the self is to live in freedom. We are no longer bound by the limitations of time, nor are we defined by the roles and identities we play in life. We can step into each moment fully, without fear, knowing that we are not our past mistakes, not our future anxieties, and not our changing circumstances. We are the timeless awareness that watches over it all, ever present, ever knowing, and ever free. This is the truth of who we are, and when we come to know it, we can live with profound peace, grace, and love. Letting go of the need for control is a profound act of liberation, yet it is often one of the hardest things for us to do. In a world that constantly emphasizes the importance of planning, managing, and asserting power over our circumstances, the idea of releasing control can feel counterintuitive, even frightening. We are taught to believe that if we do not control our lives, everything will fall apart. However, in this very struggle to control, we often find ourselves more entangled in anxiety, fear, and dissatisfaction. To let go of control is not to give up, but to surrender to the flow of life, trusting that things will unfold as they are meant to, without our interference. At the core of our desire to control lies a fear of the unknown, a deep-seated anxiety that if we do not manage every detail, we will lose our footing. It is as though we believe that by controlling our environment, our relationships, and even our own emotions, we can protect ourselves from uncertainty. Yet the more we cling to control, the more we become disconnected from the present moment. We are constantly focused on what could go wrong or what must be done next, rather than fully experiencing the richness of what is unfolding right now. The truth is, control is an illusion. Life is inherently unpredictable, and no matter how tightly we try to hold the reins, we cannot prevent the inevitable flow of change, challenges, and unexpected events. When we let go of the need for control, we release the illusion that we can master everything around us. We come to understand that our efforts to control are not about creating stability, but rather about creating a false sense of security. True security does not come from manipulating circumstances, but from trusting in the process of life itself. This trust does not mean passivity or inaction, rather it means taking conscious present actions while remaining open to the outcome, knowing that whatever happens is part of the greater whole. Life has its own rhythm, its own pace, and when we stop trying to force things to fit our preconceived notions, we allow ourselves to move in harmony with that rhythm. Letting go of control also means letting go of the need to be perfect. We live in a society that values achievement, perfection, and success, often tying our self-worth to our ability to get things right. But when we let go of the need to control, we realize that mistakes, failures, and imperfections are not threats to our identity, they are simply part of the journey. Each misstep is an opportunity to learn, grow, and expand, and when we accept this, we free ourselves from the paralyzing fear of failure. We can embrace life as a series of experiences, rather than a constant attempt to meet an ideal or expectation. This shift in perspective brings a sense of peace and acceptance, as we stop judging ourselves for not being perfect and instead begin to appreciate the beauty in our human vulnerability. There is also a deep connection between letting go of control and cultivating mindfulness. When we try to control everything, we are often disconnected from the present moment. We are too focused on the future or the past, trying to manage what has already happened or worrying about what might occur. However, when we relinquish control, we naturally become more present. We begin to observe life as it is, without the filter of expectations or demands. We experience the richness of the moment, whether it is filled with joy or difficulty, and in that experience we find a sense of peace. We come to realize that we cannot dictate the outcome of every situation, but we can choose how we respond. By letting go of control, we stop resisting the flow of life and begin to participate in it more fully. This surrender is not about passivity or resignation, it is about acceptance and trust. It is about recognizing that while we may not have control over the external circumstances of our lives, we do have control over how we relate to them. Letting go of control allows us to move through life with greater ease, free from the heavy burden of always trying to fix, change, or manipulate the world around us. We open ourselves to possibilities that we may never have considered if we had rigidly held on to our plans and expectations. In releasing control, we step into a space of freedom and creativity, where new solutions and opportunities can emerge naturally. Ultimately, letting go of the need for control is an act of surrender to the larger forces at play in the universe. It is an acknowledgement that we are part of something far greater than ourselves, and that there is wisdom in the unfolding of life that we may not always understand. When we trust this unfolding, we discover a sense of peace that comes from knowing that, despite the chaos and unpredictability, everything is as it should be. In letting go of control, we become more aligned with the flow of life, more open to the beauty of the unknown, and more connected to the present moment. And in this, we find true freedom. The flow of life is an ever-present current, moving through us and around us, shaping our experiences and guiding us through the intricate dance of existence. It is an ongoing, dynamic process, constantly changing and evolving, yet always leading us forward, regardless of how much we may try to resist. To live in harmony with the flow of life is to surrender to its rhythm, to trust in its unfolding, and to move with it rather than against it. When we resist the flow, we create unnecessary friction, causing suffering and struggle. But when we allow ourselves to be carried by it, we find a sense of ease, peace, and connection to something greater than ourselves. The flow of life is not something we can control or predict. It is not a linear path that can be mapped out with certainty. Instead, it is a series of moments, some calm and serene, others turbulent and challenging, that weave together to create the tapestry of our lives. Life has its own rhythm, its own pace, and when we try to force it into a mold of our making, we disrupt the natural order of things. To flow with life means to accept that we do not have all the answers, that we cannot foresee every twist and turn in the road, and that uncertainty is a natural part of the process. This acceptance of uncertainty is a key aspect of living in the flow. We often resist uncertainty because it triggers fear and insecurity. We want to know what will happen next, to have a sense of control over our lives. Yet the beauty of the flow of life lies in its unpredictability. It is in the unknown that we find new possibilities, new opportunities, and the potential for growth. When we stop clinging to the need for certainty and allow ourselves to be open to whatever arises, we create space for the unexpected to enter. We may find ourselves led to places we never imagined, meeting people we never expected to encounter, or learning lessons we never knew we needed to learn. Living in the flow does not mean passive acceptance or complacency. It is not about sitting back and letting life happen to us. Rather, it is about being present and responsive to the current as it moves through us. It is about engaging with life in an active way, but without forcing outcomes or trying to control the direction. We align ourselves with the flow by staying open, by staying grounded in the present moment, and by being willing to adapt and change as life requires. We trust that when we are in tune with the flow, the right opportunities will present themselves and the right actions will become clear. The flow of life also teaches us about the importance of timing. We often feel pressure to act quickly, to achieve things on our own timetable, but the flow of life moves at its own pace. There are times when we must be patient and wait for the right moment, and there are times when we must act quickly, with clarity and purpose. The key is to recognize the signs of when it is time to move and when it is time to wait. Trusting the flow means trusting that there is a perfect timing for everything, even if we cannot always see it in the moment. When we live in harmony with the flow of life, we become more attuned to our own inner guidance. We stop overthinking and second-guessing ourselves, and instead we learn to listen to our intuition. Our intuition is often the voice of the flow, guiding us toward the right decisions and actions. It is not always logical or rational, but it is always in alignment with our true path. By trusting our intuition and allowing it to guide us, we move with the current of life in a way that feels effortless, natural, and authentic. There is a deep sense of peace that comes when we let go of our need to control and instead embrace the flow of life. We stop fighting against the current and start moving with it. In doing so, we experience life more fully, with less resistance and more acceptance. We begin to see that everything, even the challenges and struggles, is part of the flow. Difficult moments are not obstacles to be avoided, but lessons to be learned, opportunities to grow, and experiences that shape who we are becoming. Living in the flow of life is a continual process of surrender, trust, and presence. It requires us to let go of our attachment to outcomes, to release our need for certainty, and to open ourselves to the mystery of life as it unfolds. When we do this, we align ourselves with the natural rhythm of the universe and find ourselves moving in a direction that is often more beautiful, fulfilling, and meaningful than we could have ever planned. Our life becomes a dance, not something to be controlled or mastered, but something to be experienced and enjoyed in its fullness. The power of vulnerability lies in its ability to connect us with others and ourselves in a profound and authentic way. It is often seen as a weakness, something to be avoided or hidden, but in truth, vulnerability is one of our greatest strengths. It is the willingness to show up as we are, without pretense, without the armor we often wear to protect ourselves from judgment or rejection. To be vulnerable is to be real, to embrace the full spectrum of our human experience, including the moments of uncertainty, fear, and imperfection. And in doing so, we create space for deeper connection, healing, and growth. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we let go of the need to appear perfect or invulnerable. We stop hiding behind facades to allow our true selves to emerge. This act of openness can be terrifying, as it requires us to face the possibility of rejection or judgment. But it is in this very openness that we find freedom. Vulnerability is not about exposing ourselves to others in a reckless or self-destructive way. It is about sharing our authentic truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. It is in embracing our imperfections that we find our strength, because vulnerability is the path to deep self-acceptance. There is immense power in embracing our flaws and weaknesses, because they are part of who we are. When we acknowledge and accept them, we no longer need to hide behind masks of perfection. We stop pretending to be something we are not, and instead we show up as we truly are. This raw authenticity is magnetic, as it invites others to do the same. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create an environment where others feel safe enough to be vulnerable too. In this shared openness, true connection occurs, and we find that we are not as alone as we may have once believed. Vulnerability is also a gateway to emotional intimacy. It is the bridge that allows us to truly connect with others on a deeper level. When we share our fears, our struggles, and our desires, we invite others into our world in a way that fosters empathy and understanding. It is through our vulnerabilities that we build trust, because when we allow ourselves to be seen in our most raw and authentic state, we give others permission to do the same. This creates a sense of shared humanity, where we realize that we are not defined by our successes or failures, but by the simple fact that we are all imperfect beings doing our best to navigate this world. In relationships, Vulnerability can be a powerful force for healing. When we open ourselves to others, we allow them to see the parts of us that we may be ashamed of or afraid to show. By sharing our deepest fears and desires, we invite others to offer support, comfort, and love. Vulnerability can break down the walls that separate us, creating space for compassion, kindness, and genuine connection. It allows us to be seen and heard in a way that goes beyond surface-level interactions, creating relationships that are grounded in authenticity and trust. There is also great power in vulnerability when it comes to personal growth. It is through vulnerability that we are able to confront our own fears, insecurities, and limitations. By being honest with ourselves about our weaknesses, we can begin the work of healing and transformation. Vulnerability requires courage, as it involves stepping into the unknown and facing the things that scare us. But it is through this courageous act that we discover our true strength. We learn that we are capable of far more than we ever imagined when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and open to the lessons life has to offer. Moreover, vulnerability is essential for creativity and innovation. It is only when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable that we can take risks, try new things, and step outside our comfort zones. Creativity often requires us to expose our ideas, our passions, and our work to others, knowing that they may not be well received. Yet it is in this exposure that we find the courage to continue, to refine, and to grow. Vulnerability gives us the permission to fail, to make mistakes, and to try again, knowing that each step is part of the process of discovery. In embracing vulnerability, we tap into a deeper well of strength and resilience. We stop seeing ourselves as fragile beings who must protect our image at all costs, and instead recognize that it is in our vulnerability that we are most alive. By embracing our vulnerabilities, we open ourselves up to greater joy, connection, and fulfillment. We realize that we do not need to be perfect to be worthy of love, respect, or success. We are enough as we are, and it is in the fullness of our humanity that we find our true power. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the courage it takes to live authentically and embrace the beautiful complexity of being human. Self-love as a revolution is a radical shift in the way we perceive ourselves and our worth. It is not just a practice of self-care or indulgence, but a deep, transformative act that challenges the very foundation of how we have been taught to view ourselves. In a world that often prioritizes external validation, comparison, and perfectionism, self-love is a rebellion against these societal norms. It is an affirmation of our inherent worth, regardless of achievements, appearances, or the approval of others. It is a commitment to honoring ourselves, to recognizing our value as human beings, and to treating ourselves with the same kindness, respect, and compassion that we would offer to those we love most. To practice self-love is to acknowledge our own needs, desires, and boundaries without guilt or shame. It is the refusal to ignore or suppress our inner voice in favor of external expectations. For too long, many have been taught to put others first, to sacrifice their own well-being for the sake of relationships, careers, or social approval. But self-love is a revolution because it calls us to prioritize ourselves, to care for our own hearts and minds, and to recognize that we are worthy of love, care, and respect simply because we exist. This revolution begins with the radical act of putting ourselves on equal footing with others, recognizing that our needs matter as much as anyone else's. In a culture that often equates self-worth with productivity, success, or outward appearance, self-love is an act of resistance. It challenges the notion that our value is determined by what we do or how we look. It reminds us that we are enough just as we are. In a world that constantly bombards us with messages of inadequacy, self-love is the antidote. It is the realization that we do not need to be perfect to be deserving of love and respect. Our flaws, our imperfections, and our mistakes are not marks of shame but aspects of our humanity that deserve compassion. By embracing ourselves fully with all our strengths and weaknesses, we take back the power to define our own worth. This revolution requires us to let go of the toxic narrative that we must constantly strive for more, be more, and do more to earn our place in the world. It is a declaration of independence from the belief that our value is dependent on external achievements or approval. Instead, self-love teaches us that we are worthy simply by being, by existing in this world with all our unique qualities and experiences. This shift in mindset is not easy, as it challenges deeply ingrained beliefs about success, perfection, and worthiness. But when we choose to embrace self-love, we begin to see ourselves through a lens of unconditional acceptance. We recognize that we are deserving of love, not because of what we accomplish, but because of who we are. Self-love as a revolution also means letting go of the harsh inner critic that often dictates our thoughts and actions. It is the practice of quieting the negative voices that tell us we are not enough, that we are unworthy of love or success. In place of this inner critic, self-love invites us to cultivate a more compassionate and understanding voice, one that speaks to us with kindness, patience, and encouragement. By choosing to speak to ourselves with love, we begin to rewire our thinking and change the way we relate to ourselves. Over time, this practice of self-compassion creates a more nurturing and supportive inner dialogue, one that empowers us to move through life with confidence and grace. The revolution of self-love is not a solitary endeavor, it is one that ripples outward, affecting all areas of our lives. When we love ourselves, we set the tone for how we allow others to treat us. We become less willing to tolerate disrespect or mistreatment, and more likely to engage in relationships that nourish and uplift us. Self-love also creates a foundation for healthier boundaries as we learn to say no when something does not align with our values or needs. We recognize that it is not selfish to protect our energy and our well-being. It is an act of self-respect and a necessary component of a balanced and fulfilling life. In embracing self-love as a revolution, we also contribute to the collective healing of the world. When we practice self-love, we are better able to love others. We become more compassionate, empathetic, and understanding, and we create an environment where love, kindness, and respect can thrive. The revolution of self-love is a movement toward collective well-being, one in which each individual recognizes their own inherent worth and, in doing so, contributes to a more loving, inclusive, and compassionate world. Self-love as a revolution is not a one-time event, but a continuous practice that requires patience, self-awareness, and a commitment to our own growth. It is an ongoing journey of discovering who we truly are, beyond the labels and expectations imposed by society. When we choose self-love, we choose to honor ourselves, to claim our own worth, and to live with authenticity and purpose. This revolution has the power to transform not only our own lives, but also the world around us as we collectively learn to love ourselves and each other more fully. The power of presence lies in its ability to bring us fully into the moment, to experience life as it unfolds without distraction or resistance. In a world constantly pulling us in different directions, where our minds are often cluttered with thoughts of the past or anxieties about the future, presence offers a quiet refuge. It is a simple yet profound practice of being fully engaged in the here and now, of giving our undivided attention to the experience at hand. When we are present, we are not lost in thought or caught up in what could be or what has been. We are simply here, alive and aware. The power of presence is transformative because it allows us to truly connect with ourselves and others. When we are present, we are not just physically in the room, we are mentally and emotionally engaged. We listen more deeply, feel more fully, and interact with the world around us in a more authentic way. This level of attentiveness fosters connection, as people sense that they are being truly seen and heard. It is in these moments of deep connection that the barriers between us begin to dissolve, and we experience a sense of unity and understanding. Being present also has the power to quiet the noise of the mind. We live in a world that constantly demands our attention, from the endless stream of notifications to the pressure to do more, be more, and achieve more. In this constant state of doing, we often lose sight of what truly matters. The power of presence brings us back to the simplicity of being. By focusing on the present moment, we create space for inner stillness and clarity. We stop obsessing over what's next or dwelling on what's already past. Instead, we ground ourselves in the reality of the present, where we find peace, calm, and a deep sense of connection to the world. When we are present, we also open ourselves to a greater sense of gratitude. Instead of rushing through life or taking things for granted, we become attuned to the beauty of the moment. Whether it's the warmth of the sun on our skin, the sound of birds singing, or the smile of a loved one, being present allows us to fully appreciate the simple joys of life. Gratitude naturally arises from the awareness that we are alive and experiencing the world as it is, without needing to change or improve it. Furthermore, presence is a powerful tool for reducing stress and anxiety. Much of our anxiety comes from our tendency to dwell on the past or worry about the future. By focusing on the present moment, we break free from these mental traps. We stop catastrophizing or overanalyzing, and instead we focus on what is directly in front of us. This shift in attention can be incredibly grounding, as it brings us back to a place of control, where we can respond to life with clarity and intention, rather than reacting out of fear or uncertainty. The power of presence also encourages self-awareness and personal growth. When we are fully present, we become more attuned to our own emotions, thoughts, and physical sensations. This awareness allows us to observe ourselves without judgment, to recognize patterns of thought or behavior, and to make conscious choices about how we respond. Through this practice of presence, we can cultivate a deeper understanding of ourselves, our needs, and our desires, leading to greater self-compassion and growth. Ultimately, the power of presence is a gift we give ourselves and others. It is an invitation to step out of the chaos of the world and into the stillness of the present moment. When we embrace presence, we embrace life as it is without trying to control or manipulate it. We become more attuned to the beauty, richness, and depth of our experiences, finding peace and meaning in the simplicity of just being. In this way, the power of presence has the ability to transform our lives, offering us a path to greater connection, clarity, and joy. Thanks for watching.